New Education Commissioner Stefan Pryor. Next. And welcome to the Stan Simpson Show, a program about Connecticut people and compelling issues, making a point to drop in every week. This was supposed to be the year of education reform at the state capitol. Governor Dan Malloy made it the centerpiece of his agenda. A highly regarded new commissioner was hired to usher in changes, but there has been resistance from union leadership to the governor's plans to revamp tenure, add more money for failing schools, and increase funding for charter schools. The unions have suggested it is too much change too quickly. Today we'll talk with Education Commissioner Stefan Pryor about what looks to be a floundering education reform agenda. He has a big problem with that word, and he's here to join us right now. The new commissioner started in November. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, Stan. Glad to be here.
Highly regarded. Now, you had a big problem with my word floundering off camera. This is what I'm seeing so far, that so far it came with much promise, but it's been watered down a bit. Your thoughts on where we are now with this?
Well, the session isn't over yet, and that's not just my sentiment and not just the governor's sentiment, but legislative leaders have expressed to us and have expressed publicly that the bill is a work in progress, and we intend to ensure that there is more work that's done to create meaningful educational reform out of this piece of legislation.
So you're not concerned yet?
No, I mean, of course, we are focused, and we think there is a lot of work that has to be done. The elements around tenure, to ensure that we have a fair system, but a system that works, that has to be fixed.
Right.
And the component around turning around the lowest performing schools in the state, that has been gutted, but there's also been a movement from members of the legislature to ensure that there are 10 schools that do get up and running. So, there's reason for hope. We have to stay focused. We need to keep collaborating with the legislature to ensure that it gets done.
Let's talk about tenure. That was the big centerpiece here of all this.
Yes.
The unions have asked that it be studied for a year. Now, I covered politics for many years, and when they talk about doing a study commission, you know as I do. When they talk about studying a bill, you can forget about it. It's gone. So your thought, there are people who feel right now that tenure is dead on arrival. What do you do next if indeed it is dead?
Well, one of the terms that's been used by legislators is that this is placeholder language, that there's study language, plan language in the location of the bill where the tenure reform component ought to go. We're going to take legislators at their word. We're going to pursue the creation of a tenure system that works. We have the benefit.
It may not happen when you want it to happen.
Oh, we're not prepared to agree to that, and we're not prepared to concede that at this point, because again, legislators are telling us keep working at it. There is a process that needs to occur, and it's really it's a long time between now and May. It seems short, but the fact of the matter is there are a lot of legislative days that we will use. We have an advantage in that there's an evaluation framework that's been established in a consensus method, inclusive of the 2 statewide teachers unions with whom we've worked very well, to establish a fair evaluation system. All we're asking for is that the tenure system, as pertains to the dismissal of teachers when necessary, when it's warranted, that it be tied to that fair evaluation system.
Okay. But right now, though, you have a plan that's not quite what you want, but better what was there previously, correct?
Well, until the tenure component is really set in place, until it becomes concrete, it's not good enough. Okay. It's not better. As a matter of fact, I think that it's incoherent as it stands, because there is a standard that's established for dismissal of teachers that's undefined in the statute. That's why I believe that legislators are saying to us it's placeholder language, it's a work in progress. They know that we need to offer a definition in fairness to teachers.
Now, I have a colleague of mine who the analogy he used was the house is on fire, and you guys are quibbling over the procedure to have the firefighters get into the building. Would you agree that's a fair analogy?
I would. And the fact of the matter is that we have a roadmap. We know how to get to meaningful tenure reform, and we know how to improve the other areas of the bill. We just have to implement it. In the case of tenure reform, we have an evaluation framework that relates both to the supports that will be provided to teachers based upon the feedback received in the evaluation process. That's what's most meaningful to teachers, the vast majority of teachers who are doing well and want to do better, to receive meaningful feedback. And then for those few teachers who are underperforming, and there needs to be a separation from service. There ought to be a fair, transparent, and agreed-upon process through which to engage in that necessary dismissal. That's all we're asking for.
Let's hear from the governor and also a union leader, Sharon Palmer, about their thoughts on this. We'll go to the governor first.
If you have a master's and you're a masterful teacher, you will be recognized. But if you're a bad teacher who has a master's degree, why should you get extra compensation?
How that would work, how the system itself would work, is not done. And unfortunately, the governor was talking about an evaluation system that the unions agreed to. Not done.
All right, so the union is saying, listen, we're still not concerned. We're concerned still. It could be too burdensome on teachers, too punitive to teachers. You're saying it won't be. We're going to move on. But that's a big issue right now, this whole issue of tenure.
It's a big issue. And I want to say, first of all, Sharon Palmer is an outstanding leader in our state, and it's been a pleasure to work with her. And I know that we can come together and arrive at even more agreement than we already have. Sharon was in the room, to her credit, and was a great advocate of doing evaluation right. We did arrive at a framework for evaluation. We do need to flesh it out together, and we do need to ensure that the tenure system operates the right way, which is to tie to that framework. I know we can do it.
But you had teachers at the table crafting this thing, and now you have teachers who are kind of killing it. It's got to be very, very frustrating for you, because you were trying to be collaborative, correct?
Well, and we have been collaborative,
right.
But I think it is natural, Stan, for there to be questions and there to be qualms about a system that's being articulated in legislation, that there's all kinds of debate over, there's a lot of rhetoric, it gets overheated.
And it's changed.
On both sides.
And it's changed, right?
Well, I think our proposal has been clear and has been steady, but I think that the rhetoric on both sides has gotten too heated. There's been more heat than light. I think we have to get to the phase where there's true light.
Let there be light, huh?
And we're better communicative about the elements of the proposal. And I think working with Sharon, working with Mary Loftus-Levine of the CEA, working with the other stakeholders, the superintendents and the principals of the state, I think we can offer clarity. And I think the fact of the matter is, as other states have experienced that have already gone through this process,
like
all of the noise.
Give us 2 or 3 that have done this where best practices.
Well, there's states all across the country that have done elements of this, and what they found is there's lots of noise that precedes the calm of having a system.
Who does it well?
Well, New Haven in our own state is doing a great job of implementing an evaluation and support system for teachers that provides meaningful support on the basis of feedback, and for that matter is providing for the dismissal through a fair process of approximately 2% of the teacher population. And frankly, there's been no grievances, as I understand it, from the union, because the union is working hand in glove with the administration of the district. That's what we're looking to implement statewide, something of that kind.
30 seconds. So best practices right here in New Haven. 30 seconds. The Commissioners Network.
Yes.
Money was supposed to be set aside so that you, the commissioner, could fix some of these low-performing schools.
Yes.
My understanding is that they've gutted some of the money and reduced the number of schools. Doesn't that take away your autonomy? Aren't you concerned about that? We have 10 seconds. We'll probably continue this on.
There's a misperception about this, actually. The legislature in committee came back and authorized precisely the number of schools we intended for year 1.
Okay. Which is how many? 10?
Which is 10 schools out of 25. It was always our plan to do 25 over 2 years. Okay. The very lowest performing schools in the state that need a turnaround. And my understanding...
Will you have control? Because the concern, I heard that your control, your autonomy now is a little shaky. Will you have autonomy to do what you want with that money?
The details do need to be worked out.
You want that control, right?
Well, it's not control so much as we want to provide flexibility at the school level to get the job done, and we want to have the tools to get the job done, whether it's the district conducting the turnaround or it's the State Department of Education's turnaround office conducting the turnaround, as long as it results in a school that serves students well rather than failing our students. That's what we want to achieve. So there will be 2 models. There'll be a district-run model and there'll be a network-run model within this commissioner's network. Okay. Both, as I understand it, both models are still heavily under consideration by the legislature. The committee itself rallied to place into legislative language authorization for 10, and my understanding is that funding is going to follow in the course of the legislative process.
Right. Speaking of network, the network's telling me now I got to go for the break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Education Commissioner Stefan Pryor and ask him about funding equity for Connecticut schools like New Britain. And what's the next step for getting education reform on track in Connecticut? You're watching The Stan Simpson Show. Check us out 24/7, ctnow.com/Stan. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Don't go away.